You're very welcome back to stage 11 of Giro d'Italia. Tarvisio, Cave del Predil to Vaillant, the small village of Erte e Casso. It's 182 kilometres in total for the riders today, and a group of 20 has managed to establish itself out front as we get rolled through the standings. This is the super team standings, not the overall team standings. There's myriad competitions for riders and teams to chase. Sky lead the regular team competition on time as well from Blanco, and they lead the super team on points too. So going well in team conditions for Sky, but not on top in the classification they'd like. As I say, 20 riders out front. We've had one rider has not started today, Sylvain Georges of AG Tour Le Mondial. That's a total of 15 abandonments from this year's race, and things are only getting harder. We lost Angel Vicioso and John Degenkolb yesterday. Degenkolb not starting. I can tell you that Sylvain Georges, reports coming through that he has failed a drug test, that he's under investigation by the UCI. Not 100% confirmed. Those are the reports I'm getting at the moment. I will chase that one up and make sure that we have that one absolutely right. If so, it's very disappointing. But as ever, good news that the UCI are being vigilant. And well, it's particularly disappointing, I think, for French cycling, which has established a very clean reputation over the years. But that's, I think, the second, if so, second positive for AG Tour in the last little while. So disappointment, and especially with things going so well towards the front of affairs for that team. Taylor Phinney at the back, who has struggled through the first week with illness not really a factor in the time trial. On Saturday he would like to have been able to make a big contribution there, but he's still hanging on in this race, and his ability to really suffer and put himself on the limit for day after day is not in question, and Taylor Phinney can only benefit from another Grand Tour in his legs at this early stage of his career. It's the Maglia Rosa group crocodiling its way up the first classified hill in this race. Sella Campiotto, it's a second category climb. It's fully about 30 kilometres of climbing in this one, average of about 4%. And it finishes with 61.6 kilometres to go. So still 16 kilometres of slogging up this hill for the leaders, and these riders are over 4.5 minutes behind them. At least for one thing, Sean, the weather is good. The weather forecast is pretty average for the week, and it's a bit 50-50 for today, but no sign of rain so far, and that'll be a great relief to all the riders.
Yes, it will certainly be a relief, because the conditions, we've had some horrible days, and not good for anybody. The wet conditions, can cause a lot of problems. You can start getting cold, because when you go up on the climbs and you do descent after warming up a lot on the climb, then you go on to the descent and you can catch a cold very quickly, and there's some riders with colds already. Also it brings on injury if you have a niggling in the knee or anywhere. Well, the cold or the wet weather doesn't help that, where the warm weather will be welcomed by everybody, and they certainly need a couple of days here because they've had enough of the wet conditions. But forecast further on out in this Giro not looking good either, and fingers crossed, because we're going to be going into big mountains, high mountains, altitude, and if you get wet weather there, well, then it'll be so cold up there, and it's never nice for the bike riders. But yes, you have no control over the weather. What comes you have to take.
Confirmation from the UCI that it is an adverse analytical finding for Sylvain Georges from the 10th of May, and the substance found was the stimulant heptaminol, which was analysed in his urine sample collecting at the Giro d'Italia on 10th of May 2013. So that's confirmation of that. Of course, Sylvain Georges has the right to request and attend the analysis of his B sample. Remains to be seen whether he'll be doing that. He is off the race as it stands. This is the front of the race, with 20 riders slogging the way up the mountainside. Danilo De Luca at the back in that lurid yellow outfit of Vinnie Fantini. Just looking through the group of overall favourites, Sean, it's obviously we were talking about Sky, but what about Cadel Evans? What does he do now about trying to close that 41-second gap? Does he just follow Vincenzo Nibali and try to do something in the time trial towards the back end of the race, or will he try and pinch some seconds here and there? It was, I think, very noticeable that Vincenzo Nibali was able to manage to outsprint Cadel Evans at the top of the hill yesterday. Cadel Evans is often a great sprinter from a small group, but he didn't quite have it with Nibali yesterday. He looks very, very strong at the moment.
Well, Nibali looking extremely comfortable yesterday. We did see we didn't see it in the first part of our pictures, but later we could see that he had a problem with his chain, able to get his hand down, get the chain back on, or he had to do something with his chain. And to do that on the climb, you have to be in real good shape. And then immediately, he didn't just sit in for a moment. When he got going, he attacked Cadel Evans and the rest of the riders that he was with at that moment, and went on. And he was looking very comfortable. But Cadel Evans also, he was doing his share of riding on the front. We could see him there. He was pulling that group along at times, and he was probably made aware that Bradley Wiggins was in difficulty, so there was an opportunity for him maybe to pull some time out of Bradley Wiggins, because the next time trial, and also he is still a danger man, and certainly was a big danger yesterday, but losing a bit, he's still in there. So I think they are the two men who are looking really good, but Cadel Evans will be hoping that Nibali will have an off day, and there's a lot of opportunities with the big mountaintop finishes to come, so it's not that we'll run out of time at all. That's certainly not the case. So there's going to be battles between them, but Evans not really preparing for this race. The beginning of the season, it wasn't on his programme, it was really in the last number of weeks, and he's having a fabulous race so far, and it's going to be a cracking days in the big mountains, certainly with Evans, because if he has got the legs, he will attack. He's changed a bit. He used to be a follower, but I think he's a rider that is prepared to attack if he has got the legs in some of these mountaintop finishes.
Serge Powell's plenty of energy, and it took a long time for this break to form, so there was a lot of hard racing in the first hour and a half of racing. 53.5 kilometres in the first hour of racing will give you an indication of how hard they were riding. Partly cloudy, 18 degrees centigrade. That weather forecast tells you that bit of a mixed bag, but so far so good for the riders, and they haven't had to don their rain jackets, and let's hope they don't have to for the rest of the day. It does give us interesting racing, there's no doubt about it, but you kind of feel for the riders. They've seen so much rain in this year's Giro. And talking about the weather, actually, there's talk that the Galibier could be in trouble. Certainly yesterday there were reports that they were busy clearing snow on the Galibier, which is waiting for us at the weekend, and some doubt as to whether they were going to be able to manage to get all the cars and riders up there. But it's a long time, it's a long way to go before we get to the Galibier on Sunday. The Alps beckon. Saturday and Sunday, high mountains for the riders. Stage to Bardonecchia on Saturday, 156 kilometres in total, then 150 kilometres in the Alps, up the top side of the Galibier, as the Giro d'Italia just steps into France and outside Italy for the one and only time during this year's race. A couple of flat stages coming after this, though. Tomorrow is 134 kilometres to Treviso. That one looks made up for the gallopers. And a long stage then on Friday, another one for the sprinters, but a long day in the saddle, 242 kilometres to Carrasco. Vittorio Puccio on the front for the Sky Pro Cycling squad has had the honour, the glory, and the excitement of wearing the Maglia Rosa for one day. Thomas Dekker at the back. Been a tough race for Garmin-Sharp, not quite what they would have wanted. So much speculation at the start of the day, Sean, about Ryder Hagedal, and lots of people were suggesting that he was going to climb off, perhaps park it, try and get himself fit, and try and figure out. I mean, I think this all stemmed from the comments from Charlie Wegelius yesterday after the stage, and they were just left scratching their heads a little bit about this loss of form for Ryder Hagedal, suggesting that perhaps there is some underlying illness or something that they hasn't quite presented symptoms other than a loss of form, and that perhaps they need to just stop for a little while and see can they get him fit. Some people are saying maybe get him fit for the Tour de France. Is it something you would recommend, stopping now?
Well, I think first of all you have to see what the problem is with the rider. If he's not feeding well and there's some problem there, well then you have to find out what is that, and you cannot continue on if you're suffering too much, because it doesn't do you any good. You just go so deep and you just get worse as the race go on. Then you have to think about the future of the rest of the season, what's on for them, and the Tour of France, of course, for Heidel. So it could be a possibility where they look at that and they say, well, if we stop on such a day here, well then we can prepare for the Tour, change program a bit, and maybe go to a Tour of Switzerland as the final preparation for the Tour of France. There's a number of things hanging out there for the moment, and on the decisions you get from those, well then you decide on what the future is. The interesting one is with Garmin-Sharp as well. Danielson also suffering big time. He should be up there in the top 10, top 15 at the moment in general classification, but also suffering big time yesterday.
So just a general lack of form from Garmin-Sharp. They haven't quite got organised perfectly for this race, perhaps, or maybe there is a little bit of a bug in the team that we haven't been made aware of. Either way, it's definitely not the Giro defence that Hejidal and Garmin-Sharp would have liked. Magnarosa Group with Vincenzo Nibali safely ensconced there behind his team, setting the tempo.
Però il ciclismo è affascinante perché è imprevedibile. Domani potrebbero esserci in effetti
Gianni Savio of the Androni Giocattoli team.
Una per la classifica finale e quindi che vedrà impegnati big, l'altra per attaccanti di giornata.
So Gianni Savio is giving his few words about what he expects from today's stage. It's going to be a tough stage for the leading contenders to break each other. And the likelihood is that if this break stays away, that there won't be so much activity behind from the leading contenders. Meanwhile, Robert Gretsch attempts to jump away from the peloton and has eyes on moving across to the lead group of 20 riders. That's going to be an impressive achievement if he manages it. He's got to close a 5-minute gap. His teammate Ego Martinez is safely ensconced up front. They're riding tempo with the other riders as they all ride up and over. So Robert Gretsch, who's been involved in the action quite a bit in the first week, so obviously has pretty good legs coming into this year's Giro, and he's decided to try his chances, try his luck. So Taylor Phinney jogging away for the BMC team towards the rear of the peloton as they wind their way up this first classified climb of the day. He lit up world cycling in the last couple of years, and particularly this year, I think, with the likes of Uran and Enau in the Sky team, Betancourt in AG Tour Le Mondial, and of course the Colombian team, other Colombians out there as well. Of course, Duque's in the break for the Colombian team at the moment, and the peloton work their way over the top of the hill and grab jackets and something to shove up their jerseys or gilets, whatever it takes to try and keep necessarily warm. Up front, Perazzi continued, well, he led over the top with 2 for company. No doubt he'll be joined by several, if not the rest of that 20-rider group that are currently enjoying over 5 minutes advantage over the peloton behind. Vinny Fantini massed towards the front. It's the safest place to collect jackets and bottles. The Astana team showing interest. So Stefano Perazzi, look at that. Well, that's an interesting, if somewhat precarious looking vantage point. I don't think I'd get up there. Yeah, Stefano Perazzi's leading the mountains classification. He's added to his points total and very, very much enjoying this Giro d'Italia so far for Bardiani Valvoli. Doing a great job, and we spoke to him before the start of the stage.
Sicuramente curerò gli uomini di classifica della maglia. Se andranno in fuga loro, andrò anch'io. Poi 2 giorni importanti saranno quelli di sabato e domenica. Quindi cercheremo di risparmiare anche delle energie per quei giorni lì che saranno molto importanti. Sì, la maglia è un obiettivo molto importante.
Perazzi is very much enjoying himself, looking forward to.
Adesso che l'abbiamo presa cerchiamo di difenderla.
Before the Giro. Now we want to keep this jersey, having got it. Now Perazzi with plenty of motivation. And one of the most exciting riders in the manner that he rides. Sometimes I think that he caused a little bit of exasperation for his followers and his team manager, but it all contributes to the levels of entertainment that we're presented with. One question, Sean. Tom Hancock tweeted into @DQ Sport. Why do the big GC contenders never attempt to get into a breakaway? Becoming new to cycling doesn't make sense, does it? Why aren't they attacking and trying to get into those big moves?
Well, if you get into the big move and then from behind the other teams are going to control the situation, it's certainly the race leader. If you're a danger man in the general classification, or if you're a big name in the earlier part of the race, but when the race is at the situation is at the moment where there's a lot of the general classification guys have lost maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and you're still not going to be allowed into the breakaway because they will control that situation we have here with 20 riders out front, nobody danger in the general classification, so Astana just will allow them to take 5 or 6 minutes and then control at that, and that's the understanding, and that is the tactic of bike racing.
So 5 minutes and 22 seconds the advantage now as the peloton is on this long and winding and tricky descent for the riders. Still just under 60 kilometres to go in this stage 11. You're very welcome back to stage 11 of Giro d'Italia. Astana setting the tempo as they have so willingly done in the last few days in defence of the Maglia Rosa of race leader Vincenzo Nibali. Nibali now 28 years of age. You said, Sean, a little bit earlier that a few years ago we thought maybe he might have the odd bad day here and there, but he seems to be getting stronger, and at 28 he's in the absolute prime of his sporting life, isn't he?
Yes,
he's reached that age, he's got the races in his legs, and
yes, and he's proved, I think, in the last number of years in the big tours, he's proved that he can keep that performance up over the 3-week period, and he's getting stronger, and he's certainly in his peak time at the moment, but he has proved in the last 2 years, I think, he can perform over 3 weeks and still be very competitive at the end of the third week.
Tom Danielson at the back of the group, back of the main group. Luke Durbridge there too. Little glance over his shoulder. The man from Orica Green Edge. No sense of great urgency in the peloton, but they're closing the gap. As up front is this Patrick Gretsch of Argus, who's been on the attack in this race already. Certainly well able to make things animated when the mood takes him, and he's got the strength. He's a good time trial rider, of course, so you can imagine that he'd be able to develop the sort of power necessary to get on top of a gear. And as so often with these big guys who aren't necessarily the greatest climbers, they can make pretty good descenders because, well, they quite simply have to be good descenders. And that could be Popovic, is it, just behind? No, confirmation, it is Patrick Gretsch of Team Argos Shimano. And it's a sort of a funny old race for Argos. They've had so much success in the first week, and that stage victory for John Degenkolb. But Degenkolb has gone home. He was pretty much exhausted yesterday and decided not to start. So 24 years of age, perhaps a good decision for the sprinter, and he'll have good legs for battles to come. Whether he goes to the Tour de France remains to be seen, with Marcel Kittel also on their books. Formidable combination if they can get them to work together, wouldn't it? Hardly the way they've played it so far, mind you. Rich Robinson said, why when the riders go back to their team cars they always go to the driver's side as opposed to the passenger side? That can't be safer, can it? Go where the bottles are going to be handed out to them.
Well, I think it's easier for the driver to come beside the rider. You can make the calculation how fast you can go, because if you're giving out bottles at the other side, or if the mechanic is doing it, well, then it's hard for the the driver of the car to make the calculation how fast you can go. Do you need to slow down a bit? So that is the reason he is in control, and that's why we see the driver always handing out the bottles 95% of the time. It's not the easiest way to do it, because first of all, the mechanic in the back of the car, he has to hand the bottles to the driver, and then he has to hand them onto the rider. So that is a little bit difficult, but it is the safest way that the driver does hand the bottles or hand the rain jackets out to the riders.
And you can see how, you'd have to say it's a pretty fun descent, isn't it? I mean, this would, in absolutely perfect surface conditions, and with the comfort of knowing that you've got a closed road ahead of you, you really can enjoy this one. And I suspect Patrick Gretsch is enjoying his racing right now, attempting to open up a significant advantage. Hasn't been joined by Popovic. Still, it's the motorbike in between himself and his chasers. Not a factor overall, so no question that the bunch will have no problem letting him go free. There's a nice little bunny hop over that obstacle there. It's not like they have pace notes. They have to work it all out on the road and consider the road conditions as they're presented to them. And that's what makes road racing so interesting and so stimulating for the participants and the viewers alike.
I think when you look at the riders in the breakaway, Gretsch, of course, would not like the climb to the finish, and he has to, go for the long ways out, and hopefully there will be a lot of rivalry back in the rest of the breakaway between some of the riders, and he can pull out an advantage on the descent here, because he knows if he waits for the final woman, there's no chance with some of the riders that are in this breakaway.
Fred Manning asks, tweeting into @TQ Sport, how tough is it on the legs to be in a breakaway 2 or more days in a row? I suppose the best people to ask right now would be Serge Powell's or Jackson Rodriguez. They're up the road for the second day in a row, but pretty tough indeed is probably the straight answer, Sean.
Yes, well, it is an energy sapping thing to do, to be in the breakaway on the second day. The riders are in real good shape. That tells that they're feeling good, they're recovering very well, and if you're in that form, well, then you can do that. But some riders, like, not in the best of shape, they can get into a break one day, but then the following day they don't even try to get into the breakaway because they need a bit of a day of recovery, and they're hoping that the break will get away early in the stage and the peloton will roll along, as we're having today, for example. But unfortunately, in the first part of the stage, it took a long time before the break was allowed to go, so it was very aggressive racing. And if you had been out there all day yesterday and hadn't recovered fully, well, then you would really be suffering in the earlier part of today's stage.
Yeah, riders will often have a look at what's going to happen the next day, and of course with a flat day tomorrow, there would have been huge enthusiasm to get into the break in anticipation of a relatively easier day tomorrow. Not that it'll be easy by any means, but just maybe that little bit easy. Look at the way the riders are just like little ants working their way down through these descents, and they're separated by minutes and so many different twists and turns.
Yes, we can see the Astana guys there on the front of the bunch, 3 out in front, another 2 just following, another 3 just following, and gaps appearing. But it is a good descent, as we can see. The surface is very good. It looks to be pretty dry, although you have to be careful, because when you go in under the trees it can be a little bit damp, but nobody really pushing. But a lovely descent, and nothing really too technical here for the moment.
A little bumpy surface change, but it's pretty smooth tarmac in appearance anyway for the riders. Gretsch certainly seems to be enjoying himself. He's very comfortable. Let's talk as well, of course, about Bradley Wiggins' comfort on the descents. Perhaps too much talk, but if Wiggins isn't such a great descender, says Kate Campion, isn't one of the easier things to practice and get better at it, especially as he's been losing time. Well, absolutely, but he's in a situation now where he's in a race, and it's not really something you can practice as such. I mean, the comfort comes back to you as you do more and more of it, and as you go further and further from the difficulty that might have caused a little bit of nervousness in the first place.
Yes, I think it's just when you get a fall and then your confidence, you lose it a bit, and it takes a number of days to get that back. And when you have stages as we've had in the first week of this Giro, where riders were crashing a lot in the final, and the roads seemed to be very slippery, and they were also in the final where they were pushing on really on the limit, and sometimes riders going over the limit, and that was the reason there was a lot of them falling off. and it just takes a bit of time to recover from that. It's not something you can do the following day, recover fully. Some riders just need a number of days and a bit of dry condition where you make a number of descents, you get the confidence back, and that's what I think Bradley Wiggins needs, and he's getting that the last days. Yesterday, today, another good day, and he will be hoping it will stay dry conditions, but he's got a bit of his confidence back, I would say, in the past 2 days.
Don't try this at home, folks. Only for the very skilled, the very fit as well. You've got to be in the fullness of your fit. Massive commitment there as well, and remember, these are closed roads for the riders. So inside 50 kilometers to go on stage 11 as the riders work their way towards Vaillant, the final climb. It comes with 33.8 kilometers to go. It starts to rise. But final hill really is 7 kilometers long up to Vaillant. 5.3% average, maximum of 9%, and that comes with 5.2 kilometers to go. So in contrast to yesterday's final hill, it's much steadier in appearance. And given that we're not too far from the Zoncolon around here, there'll be huge relief, I think, amongst the riders that they're not going to be making a right when they go into Longarone, and instead will stay left and go up to the final hill, up to Vaillant. Twenty riders up front. Patrick Gretsch is leading the break, has a little bit of an advantage over the other 19 riders. 5.5 minutes to the good. This is the back of the bunch with riders shelled out on that first climb, attempting to find their way back. Meanwhile, at the front, Gretsch reaches the lower slopes, and locals in traditional costume welcome the Giro to the region once more. People of Friuli are fiercely proud of their very separate cultural tradition. And as I said yesterday, it's one of 5 regions in Italy that has a separate, distinct status amongst Italians. Egoin Martinez of the Euskaltel team at the back of the breakaway group as they dispense with the jackets. And Patrick Gretsch surveys the scene. Meanwhile, the Astana team, quite a bit of talk as well yesterday after the stage, the way that Vincenzo Nibali was relatively vulnerable. It certainly didn't look vulnerable the way he was riding, but he was left alone by his team in the final moments of that climb. But there weren't too many other riders, with the exception probably of the two 82Rs, that actually had more than one rider up there. Wiggins, I guess, with Iran, but Vincenzo Nibali looked like he was able to take care of himself, and he was well tended in the latter stages when they attempted to chase down Rigoberto Urán. It was a pretty good job done by Valerio Agnoli, who chased us for all he was worth, and at that point after that then Nibali was left a little bit vulnerable. Do you see that that's a potential chink in the armour of the Astana team?
Well, I think it's maybe a little bit of a concern, but the climb was so difficult yesterday, and from the time Agnoli peeled off, I think there was very few riders there in the leading group, so to control the situation not too difficult. It's when you have a big group of riders after a climb, for example, and there's still 50-60 kilometres to go. That's where it gets more dangerous, and if you're isolated then as a race leader, it can be a danger point. But I don't think yesterday's anything to take from. Again, we'll have to see the bigger days when we have a real big climb in the earlier part of the stage, you know, how many riders from Astana will be able to stay up there with the pink jersey. That is the question, because we haven't had the real big climbs yet. But from what I've seen till now, they are really controlling the race very well, looking strong as well. They have a few riders there who are, you know, able to go all the way or a long way in the stage to look after Nibali. So it's looking, the team is looking okay, looking quite solid for me at the moment.
Wonderful performance by Colombia, as I've said, throughout this Grand Tour. And that was the first Colombian 1-2 finish in Giro d'Italia history yesterday. But it was the fifth time it's happened in Grand Tour history. First of those happening in July of 1985 at the Tour de France, when Fabio Parra led home his fellow countryman Luis Herrera. And then there were 4 different stages of Vuelta a España where Colombian 1-2s. A couple of wins for Alberto Camargo. Jose Martin Farfan also won a stage ahead of Fabio Parra. And an individual time trial won by Fabio Parra ahead of Luis Herrera. And Vuelta a España in 1991. I don't remember the stage, but I'd be willing to bet it went up a hill. And now the riders reach the bottom of this descent, and it's quite a bit sunnier and warmer for them now. Still 5.5 minutes advantage. Remember, the final hill kicks up properly with 7 kilometres to go. So still a long way in the valley for these riders up front to try and stay out there. Patrick Gretsch with a little bit of an advantage. And the question is, well, the expectation is really with such a sizable group up front that they should be able to work well and maintain something of an advantage. The question is, will it be 5.5 minutes or more, and how much do they need with fully 7 kilometres to the finish as the riders dispense with those jackets. Paul Martins of the Blanco squad in the break. Now, it's been difficult for rider Hejidal. So difficult indeed, losing all chance of defending his jersey in yesterday's stage. So let's hear from Charlie Wegelius of the Garmin-Sharp team now.
At the moment we're still trying to find out the precise cause of the problem. Since the time trial he didn't feel super already, but we were hoping that was something he could work through, especially with the rest day. But clearly yesterday he showed that this isn't the right rider, and rider isn't he isn't right. You know, it's not normal that he loses so much time like that. But I think that the fact that he's here on the start line this morning shows a lot of courage on his part, and it shows how seriously he takes the Giro, and you know, and that he's still here fighting, because I think that the easy thing for him to have done would have been to go home and hide away, but he's still here fighting, so that's a positive thing.
Well, Ryder Hejidal certainly respecting the history and tradition of Giro d'Italia as a champion, not in any quick hurry to rush home, so that's great to hear. And while it must be very, very difficult for him to face the fact that he's now 33rd overall, 23 minutes and 45 seconds down on Vincenzo Nibali's lead, while he's going to stick around, and perhaps he can recover. Maybe he's got some underlying health issue there, but we've seen it so much that these athletes are so good at recovering even during the incredible stresses and strains that they put themselves under through the stages. So perhaps Ryder Hejidal will be able to make a comeback, and he can chase for stage honours later in the stage. A little bit of a squeeze on there, and Danilo De Luca is delayed a little in his efforts to make it back to the leading group. It just shows the ability of all of the drivers driving in the cavalcade in Giro d'Italia.
Yes, and Corbo on the other side of his Movistar team car there, he also got quite a squeeze. The barriers just got a little bit tight for a moment.
The trick is not to panic, is it? There'll always be some way you'll find out of things. So we burst into sunshine for the first time in the stage, as the riders are now at 26 miles from the finish, 42.3 kilometres. Astana set the tempo, still maintaining that gap, and there's very little difference in the sort of watts that are being put out by the leaders up front and the leaders of the peloton. It's all amounting to about the same thing at the moment. 5.5 minutes has been the gap for quite a while. Patrick Gretsch, though, has a minute advantage over the group behind. Handy lead, but you wouldn't expect, or would you expect him? Am I maligning him by suggesting that he's going to find it a little bit difficult if he gets to the hill with only a minute advantage?
Well, a minute advantage is not certainly going to be enough for Patrick Gretsch. When you look at the riders that are in this breakaway of 20, there's some very good climbers here, but he will be hoping to keep on pulling the advantage there. And now it's a question, will they get organised behind in the 19 man which is left chasing him down? It's a difficult run in here. It kicks up a few times, but there's a lot of stuff in the valley there, and that's where Gretsch can pull out an advantage, but he needs that, the chasing group of 19, they will have to start looking around, and tactics, who's going to do the chasing, that will have to happen. Otherwise, the minute advantage or a minute and a half advantage going into the final climb would not be enough.
So little cracks appearing amongst the Astanas up front, some descending with greater facility than others, but nothing that won't easily be closed down. 1:11, so Gretsch is opening up his advantage with every passing metre. It seems to go up a second. Well, it did for a few moments. So clearly the group behind believe that Gretsch is not really a threat, and they're just tapping out a steady rhythm as well. They're not minded to chase him. You would imagine that a group of 19 riders ought to be able to get organised to chase him if they felt he was a threat.
Well, I think first of all they're going to start, looking about and who's got, two riders up in the breakaway. That's going to be the first question, and it's always the case. You wait and see, and who's going to take up the chase in this group. And when it gets to a minute, of course, it's a nice advantage, and you need a few riders to ride together to pull this one back. It's not a case where one rider can go on the front of the group and just ride along and close down the minute and 18 at the moment to Gretsch out front. So they need to organise themselves, but that always takes a bit of time. And of course, on the descent itself, you don't have the opportunity to organise the chase away. It's really when we get in the flatter section, which we're on at this moment, that's where we would see. And sometimes, the discussion goes on and riders start riding, but then there's a lot of riders want to get pulled along and waiting for the final climb, and that's where it all goes wrong for the breakaway. So we'll have to see, when we get a shot of the 19 men which are chasing down Gretsch at the moment, if they're going to get organised. And sometimes they can, just play around for so long, and this advantage for Gretsch could grow out to 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes if they do really start playing about and nobody want to organise the chase.
Gretsch going well up front. Still little bits of descending on offer for him. Decent advantage. Let's talk a little bit about the young riders competition, because some changes in that with Rafael Majka stepping into the leader's white jersey now with 1 minute and 5 seconds advantage over Carlos Betancourt of AG2R. Betancourt second for the second day in a row in yesterday's stage. Didn't put the hand up this time, realised that he hadn't got the victory, but Betancourt showing a little bit of consistency and showing no mean ability. Majka, though, has been a revelation and has that minute and 5 seconds advantage. Wilco Kelderman has struggled a little bit yesterday. Blanco team, he is third position at 4 minutes and 34 seconds. But Majka has really stepped into the limelight in this first week of the Giro, first half of the Giro.
Yes, very impressive yesterday. And of course, until yesterday's mountaintop finish, there were not really anything of real difficulty to test these men, but yesterday was certainly the one with the very steep percentage in the climb at moments, and he did a great job, Mike, just hanging in there with Cat 11s, with Vincenzo Nibali, so he's looking very impressive yesterday, and if he can keep that up, well then it's going to be difficult to take him out of that young jersey's overall classification. But Betancourt, of course, in the big mountain stages, he's going to be the danger. If he can stay in there, well then he will cause, I think, him problems. But Mike looking really strong yesterday.
Yeah, 23 years of age, the Polish rider. He's in his third season with Team Saxo Tinkoff, but he's been given an extension of 3 years last October by Bjorn Rees, so clearly they believe in him as a big name for the future. Missed last year's Giro through injury, making up for it so far this year, and he's going very well indeed. Okay, the group out front still have a handy advantage. Let's see how they get on again after these. Very welcome back to stage 11 of Giro d'Italia, with Patrick Gretsch out front for Argus Shimano, and has now established a lead of 1 minute and 25 seconds over the remainder of the breakaway group. About 19 riders that are ahead of the peloton as well, with a few minutes advantage. Astana continuing to set the pace as best they can to try and close down this without using too much energy. You don't need to save a bit for the final 7 kilometres up to Vaillant at the end of this, as Gretsch gets the food in as best he can. He's pressing on and riding very well indeed. Gretsch 1 hour and 21 minutes and 58 seconds in arrears, so he's not a factor in the overall fight. He's racing for stage glory. Mikael Golas of Omega Pharma Quickstep is at the back of the peloton as we get sight of the scene in the valley which was the scene of such tragic pictures back in 1963, 50 years ago, October the 9th. At night time it was that the huge landslide began. That led to such a wave that crashed over the top of the dam. And we remember all the dead of Vaillant, and I think we should probably talk about the spirit that they've shown to recreate communities from villages and towns that were absolutely destroyed by the disaster. It's a great thing that Giro d'Italia is able to call to attention these important anniversaries. Patrick Gretsch, meanwhile, is focusing hard on the effort of trying to open up a decent advantage over the breakaway group behind. So 5:50, almost 6 minutes advantage to this man and his cohorts and the peloton with them. That's the race leader Vincenzo Nibali. Doing a few little nibbles on the food in. Breakaway group at minutes and 46, so these breakaway riders are not a threat overall. They might move up a few positions, but it's not the main consideration for them. So 40 kilometres to go for the peloton. Meanwhile, Patrick Gretsch is at the point where he's just over 35 kilometres to go, so almost over 4.5 kilometres ahead. That's very impressive work indeed. Gives you an idea of the amount of actual distance between Gretsch and the riders chasing behind. But that gap will shrink significantly, and very quickly indeed when they hit that final hill. It looks as if the peloton have got to move on too.
I think everybody has to move on at the moment. Gretsch, we can see he's really pushing on here, and he is pulling out the advantage, and that's what he needs to do. If he can get a minute and a half, 2 minute advantage over the breakaway, the 19 men chasing him down, they will start to lose half the bit, and then it starts to they start to look at each other, who's going to do the chasing, what teams are going to really chase, and at the moment they are working okay together. We see the group there, but that will continue for a while. But if the gap is not coming down, or if it's growing out, well, then they will start to lose heart very quickly. And I think Gretsch is aware of that. His director sportif is pushing him on big time there, and this is where he can do it on the flat section. A real strong time trialer, so he's going to just give it everything, time trial to the bottom of the final time of the day.
Working our way through Calalzo di Cadore, which is facing the reservoir at the central Cadore area. We passed through a little while ago the Pesaris village which is famous for the Solari brothers, who invented the famous split flap display, or Solari board, which is so common in stations and airports. So now you know where that emanated from the Friuli, Venezia, Giulia region, and from the fertile minds and creative hands of the Solari brothers, to be very specific. 1.5 minutes now to the group behind. Gretsch is going well. So there's the lake of Pieve di Cadore, as I mentioned. Historic and social capital of the Cadore area. In Piazza Tiziano stands a monument to Tiziano Vecellio, better known to us as Titian, a multi-talented painter and a wonderful master of colour. And of course you can visit his house in the area. Team workers doing the legwork, without which the likes of Nibali and Co could not possibly win a race. And they deserve every credit that they can get.
Longo is stacking up on the raincoats. He's getting plenty of them to take back to the car, and everybody is, of course, finished with the gilet, the rain jacket now, as we start, to go up to the final climb and looking better. And on the final climb, you want minimum weight as possible, so everybody getting rid of their rain jacket.
Well, we heard from Tierra Longo at the top of the programme, his efforts in the service of Vincenzo Nibali. He's been with him for a while, moved across from the Liquigas team, now known as Cannondale, of course, to Astana. And the move has been good. At the time, there was a little bit of a sharp intake of breath. People thought Vincenzo Nibali leaving Liquigas, or Cannondale as it is now, might not necessarily be the right move for him. It was home for him. They'd looked after him so well, but it's paying dividends so far.
Yes, well, he has taken some riders across with him from the Cannondale team, and they had a very strong squad already within Astana. So he is, well supported by a lot of the riders that he can rely on, that he knows quite a while. But it's a team that's proving quite good. We could see from the beginning of the year he's won a few very good races. Torino, Adriatico, very impressive, and I think the team is, living up to his expectations to be able to support an overall winner in a 3-week tour. As Gretsch go through the second intermediate sprint, so he's going to get something for his efforts. No matter what happened here, he's going to pick up some prize money. He's won the first one, and this is the second one where it kicks up a bit, and now it's downhill once again for quite a long time, so he's into that area where he can work on his advantage, and he's still pulling out here. 1:46, he's doing a real good job, because that the train he was on there, the last kilometre and a half, 2 kilometres, it kicked up quite a lot. I was surprised that we did not see the advantage coming down back to the chasing men in the breakaway, but he's going to the section where he can pull out a lot more of an advantage, and he could get to the final climb with 2.5-3 minutes if it keeps on going like this.
Yeah, Gretsch takes another 8 points towards the points competition. He takes 6 bonus seconds on offer again, which will be of little interest or value to him. Cameron Worth leads the intermediate sprints competition, 18 points, just 3 ahead of Pim Lichtart. Neither of those riders able to infiltrate the break today, so their lead is not really under threat. Elliot Viviani, who was in the break yesterday, is no doubt trying to protect his legs as best he can for the flat stage tomorrow, as indeed also will be Mark Cavendish and all the other sprinters left in the race. They'll perhaps be relieved to hear that John Degenkolb won't be among them tomorrow as a result of his non-participation yesterday. So 1.5 minutes back to the large group, to the large breakaway group. Almost 6 minutes from Gretsch to the Maglia Rosa of Vincenzo Nibali, and the intermediate sprints haven't really had any effect on the overall classification so far with those bonus seconds on offer. Gretsch out front, handy advantage. We're making our way towards the conclusion of this. Join us after these. Welcome back. Stage 11 of Giro d'Italia 2013. Riders working their way from Tarvisio to Vaillant, 182 kilometres in total. We're down to the last 30 of those, and a few fans of Bradley Wiggins, Adam Blythe, Alex Dowsett, David Miller. Not sure if there are any other British riders in there. Steve Cummings, of course. Let's forget Steve. And fans of so many different nations out on the roads in the Giro d'Italia as Patrick Gretsch continues to maintain and indeed extend his advantage over the group behind. Now lost a few seconds actually in the last kilometre, just as I said. A minute and a half still to the good ahead of 19 riders, and those riders are ploughing on ahead of the peloton, led for so long by the Astana team. We see Stefano Perazzi third in line there, Duque of Colombia. And let's hear from Michele Scarponi. Well, we will have an interview with Michele Scarponi coming up very shortly from Lampre Merida, who's going very well indeed in this race. Surprised a few with his impressive performance. Currently 6th overall, 2 minutes and 13 seconds behind Vincenzo Nibali, and we have that one lined up coming up shortly as the Astana team continue to push onwards and upwards towards the finish. And the entire Astana team on the front of the group. No one seemed to be suffering a little bit. We did get a sight during the break, Sean, of rider Hejidal down at the back, and doesn't look as if he's looking very comfortable. So I wonder, will he be able to ride through this little patch that he's got? And he really doesn't seem to be enjoying his time in Giro d'Italia at the moment. And we really have to respect the reigning champions' willingness to remain involved in the race, to respect the race, respect its tradition, and try to stay in there for as long as possible.
Yes, certainly he's suffering. We could see him there very much to the end of the main peloton, and he seems to be struggling just to stay there in that the last 25 riders of the main group. And with the way the pace is going at the moment, for a rider like Hejidal, normally he could sit in the group very comfortable, but it doesn't look the case at all. So as we heard from Wiggins also, that he's suffering and not, the rider that he is, and there's some little problem there, and I think we will have to wait maybe for a couple of days to see, and will he go on all the way in this race, because if he is carrying something, if he's sick, well then we could possibly see him leaving the race.
And this is Hejidal's teammate Ramūnas Neverdauskas of the Garmin team, and he's leading the chasing group now 1 minute 22 seconds behind Patrick Gretsch. So it looks as if they've stepped up their pace a little bit and shaved a few seconds. Is Gretsch starting to feel the pinch a bit? This is not going to suit him, because he's still a long way from the final 7 kilometres and needs a big advantage if he's going to hang out in front. Astana continuing to plough ahead, but 6 minutes the advantage for Patrick Gretsch. So the leaders out front, all 20 riders, are managing to open up a little bit of an advantage, a little bit more daylight between themselves and the peloton. Now let's get that interview from Michele Scarponi of Lampre Merida.
Ma penso che oggi sia una tappa in cui possa arrivare una fuga.
Well, today I think it's a good stage for a breakaway from far out, because the classification is long. There are some riders really in late every day, so it's the right situation for a breakaway to make it. Of course, the arrival is on a climb, so also with a breakaway we could see some attacks from behind. I'm not so far away from the podium, but for sure Nibali is doing it really well and has a very good advantage. Behind we're almost all together, so the classification can change very quickly. Scarponi been a surprise for you this year, Sean? He seems to be going well. 6th, slipped a little bit yesterday, but he's right there.
No, it's not a surprise. I think he's in the position that you would expect him to be hovering around there in that first 5-7 riders, and he's certainly doing that. Yesterday he suffered a bit, and we could hear the talk there. He's not too far off the podium, so he is thinking about the podium, and he's saying that Nibali looks very impressive, which is the case, and Evans also, I think, maybe a difficult one for him, but he's probably thinking a place on the podium is to play for at the moment, and that is certainly looking to be the case, and he will be hoping that maybe some of the ones ahead of him in general classification, Guessing for example suffered a bit more yesterday, and as the race go on he could finish on the podium, and then you see in the very difficult days, if some of the other bigger favourites, Nibali and Evans, if they're in difficulty, Scarponi is a solid rider. He's always there, losing a little bit here and there. In the time trials, pretty solid as well. So a podium place is very much possible for him all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so great about it. I mean, it really is difficult to call, and there's so many different riders that are involved at the moment. It's not just about one or two or three. There's most of the top six are there. You could throw in Sant'Ambrogio, finished so well yesterday. We haven't spoken too much about Sant'Ambrogio. He's now 7th overall, 2:55 behind. Difficult to see how he's going to close on Vincenzo Nibali, but certainly very, very strong indeed is the Vinny Fantini man.
Yes.
Nimitz of Lampre is right there as well, 3:35 back. Pozzovivo, his attacking performance yesterday, he's into the top 10 for AG2R, 4 minutes and 17 seconds, and when he's got that long time trial out of the way, he's still in the top 10. He's got one more time trial to do, but it's one with a climb, big climb. So maybe Pozzovivo's difficulties are over.
Certainly, I think Pozzovivo is becoming a danger man. If he can hold in there for the big mountain top finishes and the time trial, as I said, which is an uphill time trial all the way, he could pull back a lot of time. The interesting one yesterday was Pozzovivo and Betancourt. I thought they would be more explosive. I thought they would cause more problems. Both of them had a go, but weren't really as impressive as they would expect them to be. Although Betancourt, he did hold on and get second place. I thought he would maybe close down on our leader out in front yesterday, but not doing that. But again, the longer climbs, I think that's when they can be really dangerous, and they're certainly the two AGR men are still in there to play for the general classification.
Yeah, it's been a while since AG2R have been such a factor in an overall classification.
Well, of course they had with John Gadray a number of years ago. He finished up in the general classification. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. He had a very impressive Giro, won a stage actually, but apart from that, they haven't had a lot of success in the general classification in the races, and they've got two riders here who are very much in the position to have a real good end classement here. Yeah, the acquisitions of Pozzovivo and Betancourt have certainly been favourable for AG2R. Now the attacks are coming, and it is perhaps not unexpectedly I should say, Danilo De Luca, who's getting more and more concerned about the fact that Patrick Gretsch is hanging on out front with that 1 minute and 26 second advantage, and the riders have decided to chase this one, so Danilo De Luca is not going to be let get away too easily. Pirazzi, one of the riders that responded, so too Serge Pauls, who seems very quick to react to anything that's happening. He's second in line and calls De Luca to account. Pirazzi straight there as well, and rider at the back of the group is Ego Martinez. Just one rider that seems to have a little bit of difficulty getting back on. Was he back at the car getting a drink, or was he just caught out a little bit by the pace, feeling the legs a bit? But most of the riders seem to be able to respond to that. And what sort of a signal would that send to the other riders? Is it now game over in terms of working together, or will they kind of go, well, okay, De Luca is telling us that we haven't been going fast enough? Yes, I think that is telling us that the pace is not going fast enough, and the riders are not contributing enough here. And De Luca, of course, an experienced rider, he knows with 22.5 kilometres to go, we have to start doing something here, and if they're not prepared to ride and pull together, well, then you have to start to attacking them and get the rest of the riders, which was 19, and we seem to have 18 at the moment, but I'm not surprised with that big attack of De Luca. You have to get it into the attacking mode, and then there will more riders attack, and try and get a smaller group to get away, because if they do not do that quickly, I think it's going to be difficult for them in the end to pull back. If he keeps on pulling the advantage out, but as we see 121 at the moment, he was making big inroads for a while, but Gretsch is having difficulty now and just at 120, so it's all to play from the final climb. But De Luca probably feels get into a smaller group that some riders here maybe feel if he takes him to the final climb, it's going to be difficult to beat him for a stage victory.
De Luca goes again, not with the same conviction, but has a little look over his shoulder to see how the other riders respond. And I suppose the question is now, are they encouraged to continue to work in cooperation, or are we going to get a series of stalls and attacks before this breakaway group snaps into 2 or 3 places? 1 minute and 20 seconds the advantage for Patrick Gretsch, so that little bit of activity is shaved another few seconds off his advantage. But Gretsch has 6 minutes and 6 seconds over the Astana-led peloton, as Bonifon has decided, is he the man that was struggling to get back on, or has he attacked out of the front? He's gone out of the front of this group. It's Daniel Oss and Perazzi that have decided to close this one down, so these 3 riders have a little bit of an advantage. Bonifon, if he looks over his shoulder, will realise that he needs to get into the wheel of Daniel Oss, and he wasn't alive to the danger, and has another little look over his shoulder. He's trying to see who's going to come up. It could be Kobo, I think, of Movistar that is coming up to Bonifon, and these 2 riders, Perazzi and Oss of BMC, or is it Navardauskas of the Garmin squad? Yeah, it's Navardauskas of the Garmin squad, similar blue colour, and 2 big riders capable of generating big power that have managed to carve a little bit of an advantage. Now it's the big men out front of this breakaway. Patrick Gretsch, who's a pretty good tester. He's got he finished 13th in the individual time trial to Saltara last weekend, so he's obviously got a decent turn of pace on the flat. Mas is a good passista and capable of a good finish. Navardauskas, one of the big engines for Garmin-Sharp, who's now been let off his leash because this man, he's in shot there for just a second, number 1 rider Haytida, no longer an overall contender, and the Garmin riders have been given an opportunity, free rein, to try and see what they can do. Well, Navardauskas believes that he can close down the gap to Gretsch, and it's shrinking with every 10 metres by about a second, the way things are going at the moment.
And this is the opportunity for the 2 riders chasing here, Daniel Oss and Navardauskas, ride real strong here to get out of that group of the big breakaway group. And if you can do that, I think Gretsch is, he's for the taking there with 59 seconds at the moment. They know that they can pull him back, but they have to really keep on riding here. As we can see, they pulled out a right good advantage with 3 more riders chasing, another rider trying to come across on his own. So De Luca certainly has opened up this race and blown this breakaway apart.
Yeah, he kicked it off and blew it apart, but he's missed it all, hasn't he, so far? So they've split into groups of 1s and 2s and 3s, and at the very back of it all is Danilo De Luca, who must be very frustrated indeed. Maybe he'll just sit in the wheels for a little bit longer, see if riders can knit this one back together again, and then he'll go again and perhaps try and get up to the Oss one. That would be the obvious tactic, but De Luca, he'll be very frustrated and grumpy after all that.
Or maybe he feels that just by just opening it up a bit and getting the riders in the attacking mode, and sit on the rear and leave them do all the chasing. And as we can see, there's a lot of chasing going on. Everybody seems to be active at the moment, and De Luca sitting on the rear. Maybe he feels if he gets to the final climb with the race going this way, when it gets a bit active, a bit aggressive, everybody has to put in an effort here. He maybe feel that he can do something and take the stage victory.
And the old dog for the hard road. He's not going to give it up too easily. Riders trying to get together just at the back. Of this group is Samiento. And Paul Martins just drags them up to that group of 4 riders that were clear, but Oss and Navardauskis have a decent advantage, haven't they?
Yes, and they're working well together. 2 real strong riders. They can ride so strong.
Now within half a minute of Gretsch.
Yes, they're really closing down on Gretsch, and that's what they both understand. This is the opportunity for them to get away from the rest of the breakaway riders and really ride hard for a number of kilometres and not allow anybody to get back in again, and then they can go on. And if they can do that for another number of kilometres, I think the rest of the breakaway will start losing heart, and there'll be a lot of marking each other tactically, and then we will see Oss and Navardauskis pulling out quite a big substantial lead before the climb.
Roberto Ferrari on the back of the peloton, the galloper for the Lampre Merida squad, and then look over his shoulder to realise there was no one else there. Meanwhile, Navardauskis and Daniel Oss are going to close up to Patrick Gretsch very soon indeed. There he is, just ahead. Gretsch, perhaps have been made aware of the fact that these 2 riders were coming up and were carving into his lead. It's possible that he might have just throttled back a little bit, taken a bit of a breather. He needs to be well aware they're just pouncing on him, and will Gretsch be able to react? Well, it makes a bigger effort than perhaps he'd like to. God, he should have told me you were coming.
Yes.
Maybe his team car should have told him.
Yeah, surprising that he wasn't made aware that they were coming up very quickly, because they came by him at such a fast rate, and he's going to have difficulty getting into the wheel here. If he doesn't make it quickly, yes, he is going to get on.
I hope they give him a couple of moments. Big turn by Navardauskis puts Gretsch under a little bit of trouble, but no harm done. Navardauskis second in line. This is Daniel Oss up front, gives the little flick, calling his temporary teammate, you might call him, to the front for another turn. Oss's turn a little bit shorter than Navardauskis' last contribution. Oh, Gretsch isn't enjoying it. He's been out front for a little while. And that little injection of pace, making him very uncomfortable indeed. He's just looking to get any little opportunity to freewheel, because the lactic acid is filling up in his legs every time he stomps on the pedals.
Yes, I think he was already starting to suffer before he was pulled back by the 2 chasers, and the speed they passed him, and losing that 3 or 4 bike lengths when you're going at 55 kilometers per hour, you get into the drafting, and difficult to close it down. He just made such an effort there. It's going to take him a long time to recover. I'd not be surprised if it kicks up any little bit at all, the way the 2 are riding, Oss and Navardauskis, that he will get into difficulty to hold on there.
It's almost 6 minutes advantage between the 3 riders up front now. Ramūnas Navardauskis, Daniel Oss and Patrick Gretsch. Danilo De Luca is still safely ensconced in a group of now 17 riders. That's trying to get on terms. And the bunch behind, led as they have been pretty much throughout this stage, or at least certainly since this breakaway established itself, by the Astana squad of Vincenzo Nibali. But it's all kicked off up front. Welcome back. We're inside the last 14 kilometres of stage 11 of Giro d'Italia. There's a group of 3 up front who've established a handy advantage now of 1 minute and 21 seconds over the remaining 17 riders from the 20 that have broken clear from the main peloton. The peloton being paced along by the Astana squad now, just under 6 minutes behind the 3 leaders. And now this is sight of the 17 riders that are chasing the 3 up front: Ramūnas Navardauskis, Daniel Oss and Patrick Gretsch, with Serge Powells of Amiga Pharma Quickstep looking very comfortable indeed on the front of this group, but he's missed out on the opportunity to be up front with those 3 riders who paired across to Patrick Gretsch, who'd been out riding solo for quite a while. And these racers are attempting to carve out a decent advantage so that they can perhaps contest the victory at the top of the final climb to Vaillant. Second summit finish in successive days for the riders in Giro d'Italia as the race reaches its halfway point. And the gap is going out again between the three riders, continuing to rise. Three riders out front, almost a minute and a half advantage for Os Navardauskas and Gretsch. This is Navardauskas on the front for Garmin-Sharp. Second in line, Daniel Os of the BMC squad. And in the white of Argus Shimano, that is Patrick Gretsch, who's feeling the pain. Patrick Gretsch is not able to make a contribution at the moment. He's been out front riding solo for quite a lot longer than the other two riders, and those riders will be aware and understand that Gretsch is not in a position to make a contribution at the moment, and Daniel Os drives it on the front, causes pain to Gretsch. Navardauskas seems comfortable with the pace that's being set at the moment, and these two riders really did a great job indeed. And Gretsch is deciding to go up. Maybe Os is going to make him go up.
And they're not too concerned about Gretsch. You see the Navardauskas Os is just pushing on here, and they are riding real strong, and it's amazing the way they went away from that group. The rest of the breakaway, they were just very, very strong at a real fast pace. And of course with the uphill finish, Gretsch is not a problem. If it was a flat run in from here, they'd be a bit more concerned about carrying a guy along in the slipstream and giving him an easy ride, but they know that the way he's suffering at the moment, the very minute he starts to go uphill to the final climb, he will lose contact real quickly.
Gretsch is a spent force, but these two big strong riders, what will they have in terms of strength as the climb looms towards the finish? It's 7 kilometers of climbing, 5.3% average, maximum of 9%, just to give you the bare bones of statistics. The last few hundred meters are downhill, otherwise it's a climb all the way, and a pretty steady gradient. And Gretsch is cracked, so that's the end of him. And the road is rising, so it's not like he can just sit in the slipstream. It's not a particularly steep gradient at the moment, but it's just that little bit of extra gradient, and the fact that Navardauskas and Os are really driving on, and now 141 to the good.
And how much do they need on the final climb? That is the question, because with the chasing group, if you look at the riders that are in there, De Luca can climb quite well. You have Jackson Rodriguez, who is a real good climber. There's a lot of very good climbers there, and with 7 kilometers of a climb, is 2 minutes enough? Because when you ride with two up front and you really give it all you've got to get to the climb, well, then you could pay a deal and they could start suffering. They are two big, strong guys. They're not the best of climbers, so they need to pull out as much an advantage as possible before they get to the final climb.
Rider Hejjedal not really enjoying the company of the camera motorbike at the moment. He is, though, enjoying the company of Nathan Haas, his team helper, who is keeping him company, but at the rear of the peloton, as Hejjedal has another difficult day, a day for survival for the reigning champion, just attempting to try and hang on in Giro d'Italia as long as he can. So now Vincenzo Nibali, as he has been for so much of today, indeed so much of the last 4 days, to the fore, not quite precisely on the front, but very close indeed, as the peloton reaches the final 15 kilometers. And they reach it almost 5 kilometers behind Daniel Os and Ramunas Navardauskas out front. Peloton spreads across the road, suggesting that the pace isn't too hectic indeed. Well, just for those few moments at least, it had slowed a little bit. It'd be interesting to see whether the Sky team or perhaps one of the other teams, Lampre Merida or AG2R, try and go to the front and change things as we get towards the foot of the climb with 7 kilometers to go. 2 minutes and 5 seconds advantage between these two riders and the 17 riders chasing behind. Care to speculate, Sean, on how much time they need?
Well, it's going to be an interesting one. I think they would need 2.5 minutes. When you look at the riders that are chasing down, there's also Perazzi, who is there. Kobo seems to be very aggressive in that chasing group also. There is so many riders there that can close down this gap, and I feel they will need the 2.5 minutes. I'm not sure if 2 minutes would be sufficient for them to hold on.
Interesting development. Salvatore Puccio of the Sky Pro Cycling team in his first Grand Tour, racing at home, has already experienced the Maglia Rosa, and a little bit of a gap between himself and the Breakaway riders. So clearly not content with the pace that they're setting. Whether that was a full-blown attempt to try and get clear of them, or he just found himself rolling off the front, and certainly he's slots back in. De Luca goes to the front. And these riders seemingly unable to do anything about those two up front. Perhaps they're satisfied that they'll be able to close them on the final hill. 6:22 now between Navratilakis and Os and the group behind. 4 minutes and 4 seconds or so advantage for those riders, as this Duque has decided to try his chances. Leonardo Duque of the Colombian squad. He's just under an hour behind, 55 minutes behind on overall time, so not a factor at all. And it was a good turn of speed in a group. He's a sort of stocky, short, stocky guy who's able to produce a decent sprint, but he's not a big guy by any means, so his climbing ability is there or thereabouts as well. 10 kilometers to go now for the Breakaway riders, just over 2 minutes behind the leading two of Navratilakis and Os, and somewhere in between them is Patrick Gretsch, who is attempting to recover as best he can and waiting for those Breakaway riders. Now there's definitely a little bit of impetus in the peloton, but doesn't seem to have affected the lead that these two riders out front have got. Daniel Os second in line here in the red and black of BMC, 26 years of age, based in Trento. And the Italian who has some solid results over the years. Fifth in Ghent-Wevelgem a couple of years ago. Third in E3 Price. Ninth in Milan-San Remo. Yet to come up with the really big result. You wouldn't have expected that it's going to come on a mountain stage of the Giro, but he's given himself a racer's chance of going for victory today. He's certainly enjoying himself out there, going for glory inside the final 7 kilometers, and they've hit the hill. 2 minutes and 12 to the good ahead of the chasing group, and over 6 minutes ahead of Vincenzo Nibali's Astana squad leading the peloton. At Brandon Err wants to know, when a rider attacks, are there any alerts from other peloton riders, or is silence the code?
Well, I think everybody can see what's happening. You're there in a group, as we have the situation with Duque going in the attack. Everybody have seen that, no matter if you're on the front of that group of chasers, or you're a bit further back, you can see the rider going away, and they have been riding together in the group, so they know pretty much who's in that group, and you can see, you can pick out the rider from the jersey, and I think everybody would know each other pretty much here. There might be some of the riders you wouldn't know by name, but you would see the style of rider they are, and you know what you've got to do if they go in the attack. So
would the pros give a bit of a shout just to alert their other teammates that perhaps this is a rider they don't want to let see go? A little bit of yup.
Well, sometimes if you're in a breakaway of 5 or 6 riders, or maybe in the bigger group as it was today in the earlier part when they started attacking each other, sometimes yes, they do give a call when somebody's attacking, but normally it's not the dumb thing.
Yes, it's not the dumb thing is the phrase, really. Leonardo Duque grabs a bottle. Duque's 33 years of age now, so he's An old stager, has taken a stage victory in the Tour of Spain way back in 2007. Won Cholet Péloir as well in 2010. That's second on the stage of the Tour in 2008. So some very solid and decent results over the years. Navardauskas sets the tempo. And longer turns at the front as we hit the tough gradient, and Doss doesn't seem to be enjoying this, or perhaps he's going to just wait a bit longer before he goes to the front. Oh, and it was attack, we just missed it. Yeah, Doss grabbing a little bit of a drink, and Navardauskas decides to put him under a little bit of pressure. That's an interesting thing he did there. To what end is the question? Well, it appears that Navardauskas is feeling a lot stronger than Daniel Oss. Oss is able to respond once more, but for how much longer? Now Team Blanco go to the front of the peloton as they hit the 10 kilometre to go point. Robert Hessink, remember, is 5th overall, 2 minutes and 12 seconds behind our race leader Vincenzo Nibali. They will have seen what Sky Pro Cycling managed in yesterday's stage, and they've decided perhaps to try something different. Remember, they've Kruijswijk 19th overall and Kelderman 22nd overall, both over 8 minutes back, so they don't quite have the cards to play in the same way as Daniel Oss has cracked, and no surprise really, Navardauskas is going on alone. 2 minutes and 44 seconds make that 45 back to Duque. Navardauskas is racing towards glory. Has he got enough in hand over the groups chasing behind? So Daniel Oss is a spent force inside the final 5 kilometres of stage 11 as they race up this final climb to Vahont. The Lithuanian Ramūnas Navardauskas, 25 years of age, took a stage of Tour of Romandy this year, so obviously he's in excellent form indeed, and an important member of the team time trial winning squads of Garmin-Sharp in the Giro last year, and indeed in the Tour de France in 2011. Second on GC in the Denmark run, post-Denmark run last season, so Navardauskas, a very strong campaigner indeed, and his progress has not been halted one whit by the increase in elevation. He's a big guy in relative terms, but clearly on a good day.
Yes, he is looking impressive, and we could see him there in the beginning of the climb. He was just putting in these little accelerations to put Daniel Oss in difficulty, and he certainly did that very early. And he's looking like now that he's going to go on with the advantage at 2:48. Difficult to see, although we have Duque and Bonafont we see from the AG2R team coming up there. Unless Bonafont maybe could put in a good performance, he is probably the most danger to try and get back to Navardauskas as we can see him here.
So Bonafont has struck out alone from the group. He looks like he's about to close down on Leonardo Duque of Colombia. Duque is labouring. So Guillaume Bonafont of AG2R Le Mondial, over an hour down on GC, so not a threat in any way, but has good climbing legs. There's Patrick Gretsch, who's been dead man pedalling for a little while. He's coming back to the group, and it's unlikely that he'll have anything to respond to Bonafont and Duque when they come up to him. Indeed, it'll be interesting to see whether Duque is able to say with Bonafont closing at a rate of knots. Meanwhile, up front, Navardauskas looking very strong indeed, now with 6 minutes and 20 seconds advantage over the peloton. Will that be enough to hold off the likes of Vincenzo Nibali and co? Giro stage winner, of course. Was he in pink? I think he might have been.
Certainly was in pink, and looking really impressive here, getting a good rhythm, and it doesn't look like there's anybody else will be able to put him under pressure here, try and get back to him, because we can see the advantage he's got over the chasers, and the way he's pushing on here, it looks like he's going to take stage victory.
Vincenzo Nibali, cool, calm and collected, 6 minutes and 16 seconds behind. He's got bigger fish to fry than merely stage 11. Probably be happy that if the riders up front take the bonus seconds on offer. Remember, 20 seconds, 12 seconds and 8 seconds respectively for the first 3 over the line. Daniel Oss is really feeling the pinch, not enjoying it. He's pressing on though. Great potential for a super result in a stage of Giro d'Italia for the young Italian. Just over half a minute behind, and still has the motivation to push. 3.2 kilometres to the line for the race leader. So for Daniel Oss, there's still lots and lots to fight for, and he'll hope and believe that it might be possible that Navardauskas will crack up in front of him, and if he can get up to him, then if Oss has any legs at all, it's a slightly downhill sprint now. Perazzi has struck out for glory out of the chasing group, and he is a climber, and you know that not least because he's wearing the leader's classification jersey of the King of the Mountains competition. And Bardiani Valvole's Stefano Perazzi is racing to see can he close down this gap, but he's got an awful lot of work to do, because as Navardauskas hits the final 3 kilometres, and he's through the worst of this. The toughest gradient comes with 5.2 kilometres to go, so it's an average of 5.3%, and looked as if Navardauskas might just be slowing a little there.
Well, it's difficult to make the calculation, because, as you said, it's a little bit easier as you went through the 3 kilometres to go, but I'd be surprised if anybody can get back to him. Although Daniel Oss has got into the rhythm there, because he did suffer in the very earlier part, and as you can see here, he's working quite well at it, so limiting the advantage that Navardauskas is pulling out, but I cannot see anybody catching up with Navardauskas at this stage. Although when you see him now, he seems to be suffering a little bit more, but again, it's just a little section here where the gradient is kicking up, and Perazzi, of course, getting out of the group. I think he was much too far off Navardauskas at the time he went. He should have been that bit closer at maybe 20-30 seconds.
So Ryder Hagedal's getting the word perhaps that Ramūnas Navardauskas is racing to glory in Giro d'Italia. Does he have enough in hand to hang on? It's looking good for him at the moment. Ryder Hagedal is amongst a large group that is just going to work its way to the top of this hill and save as much energy as possible for tomorrow. Amongst them, we got a quick sight of Mark Cavendish of Omega Pharma Quickstep. We look forward to potential stage honours tomorrow. Meanwhile, the group of favourites massed towards the front. Tsietsu for Sky Pro Cycling, not too far behind him, of course, Bradley Wiggins. Daniel Oss grimacing in a way we didn't see him even at the point where he was dropped by Navardauskas. He's shaking his head. It's all body language that isn't particularly positive at the moment. Be nice to have a time check, because he's still obviously plenty of motivation, and as best you can judge it, his momentum is pretty similar to that of Navardauskas. Gets back in the saddle and looks as if lost a little bit of momentum there, but he's still pushing hard all the way to the line. Inside the final 2 kilometres now for the race leader, Ramūnas Navardauskas. Further down the hill, the group of favourites start to look around each other to see that they're all there, to see if anyone's showing any excitement, any ambition. Do you think we're going to see anyone try to steal a march, maybe grab a few seconds as they get closer to the line, Sean?
Well, I don't think anybody in the very top of the general classification, we will not see that happening. Maybe some the riders who are a bit further down, the 10th place from there down in the general classification, they might have a go and try to take a couple of seconds. But the way it's looking at the moment, Stan are just pushing on the pace and keeping it high enough that to stop any attacks coming out of the main peloton.
Aptex Radio says, why doesn't Wiggo have a go solo to try and pull back 10 to 15 seconds if he could TT his way over the last 2 kilometres? Easier said than done, and you can be sure Astana would be all over him if he did that now. Navardauskas is looking good, gets out of the saddle again, really suffering in the heat as he works his way towards the top of this climb to Vaillant, and there is that infamous dam created in 1959. At the time it was the tallest dam in the world, still one of the tallest dams in the world, but now no longer used, and there are still there's still evidence of that horrific landslide that led to all those deaths back in 1963, and we remember all those souls lost in that terrible tragedy then in this stage as Navardauskas races on. Group of favourites behind, still very much Gruppo Compatto. And now inside the final kilometre for Navardauskas. And the gradient has become just that little bit shallower, but still he's on a very, very small gear indeed, and tempting to rev. And you can be sure that he's starting to feel the lactic acid. Could well be a little bit of cramp in there, and desperately trying to spin as small a gear as possible and not put those tired muscles under too much pressure, and so they don't go over the top. And he has to, he locks up and stops altogether, as a little bit of ambition being shown from the main bunch.
Grief, Francis from Lotto. It tells us that the pace being set by Astana is not very high, because otherwise we'd not see a rider of that quality going in the attack.
Well, he's the best placed of the Lotto Belisol riders for what it's worth. He is, though, fully 11 minutes and 43 seconds down in 23rd position. That's Francis de Grief of Lotto Belisol.
Yes, and he's just, as we mentioned, maybe somebody a bit further off in the general classification will try and pull a bit of time back and try and move up a little bit in the general classification. But at this point, when you see a team sitting on the front, Astana are just going to continue, allow them to hang out there, and as we get closer to finish, the pace will be up, and these guys will be swallowed up once again.
Francis de Grief of Lotto Belisol steals a little look behind to see how much time he's making on the group of favourites. They're not really all that concerned with him, but we are very much concerned with this man. It's Ramūnas Navardauskas of the Garmin-Sharp squad, 25 years of age, from Lithuania, and the pain and suffering is over, and it's been well worth it today, because on stage 11 of Giro d'Italia, Ramūnas Navardauskas is working his way towards the finish. He receives the applause from the crowd at the top of the hill. He has that last look behind him, and he knows for sure inside the final 200 metres that he has taken a solo victory in Giro d'Italia. And what a wonderful performance it's been from him, attacking out of the large group, the large breakaway group that took so long to race clear. It's Ramūnas Navardauskas that freewheels to glory in Vaillant. He takes victory in stage 11 of Giro d'Italia 2013, arms in the air, and celebrates and points to his Garmin-Sharp logo. It's been a great team effort for them after all the difficulties that they've encountered, but well, it's been a great solo effort really from Navardauskas today. What a fantastic performance, and he takes career-defining Giro d'Italia stage win. And finally the grimace gives way so easily to a smile on his face. Navardauskas takes victory. Who's going to get second? Well, that's big grimaces still for Danielos, and it'll be a mixture of delight, satisfaction and disappointment for the man from Italy, because he raced so well and with such facility with Navardauskas to break clear of that breakaway group, and he's going to hang on to take a fine second place. Not the victory that he would have liked. Looks under his left armpit and right armpit just to make sure that he's in a position to freewheel through, and he accepts the plaudits of the crowd. It's a flamboyant finish for the second place man, but a successful one indeed. Good performance from Danielos, and another good result. Navardauskas from Os, they're the first two over the line. Now who's going to emerge? Will it be Bonifant? That would be the expectation. Has he managed to distance Leonardo Duque, as Navardauskas is ushered towards the post-stage formalities? has the opportunity to step on the podium for the second year in succession, and it's Perazzi who's managed to get ahead of them all. Perazzi, who's going to take some very, very useful mountains classification points. Danilo De Luca is hunting him down inside the final 600 metres, but Perazzi, well, as he looked there, he's not going to have seen De Luca. No doubt he'd be made aware, and some more of the breakaway group are racing for the minor positions, but it's a good result for Stefano Perazzi. Some very, very useful mountains points indeed, and another great result in Giro d'Italia. And he's having a great race so far. He's been in the thick of the action throughout the first half of the race. So too has Danilo De Luca, but he's not coming up with the stage win. More disappointment for him. Stefano Perazzi of Bardiani Valvoli it is who takes third position on the 11th stage. Again, for the Italian, it's a mixture of satisfaction and perhaps a little frustration at what might have been for so many of the riders. It was such a big breakaway group. So many riders will genuinely have felt they could have managed something. But super performance by Navardauskis and from us for those two big riders to stay clear of this group. That included so many riders that are decent climbers. So it looks as if De Luca is going to get swallowed up, and Puccio is the next man across the line. Plenty of Italians involved in the action today. Second, third, fourth and fifth across the line, if my maths are right. But they didn't get the number one position. That goes to the Lithuanian, Ramūnas Navardauskis. The bonus seconds have been mopped up as well. And no sign of the group behind of any action amongst those. So it's been a relatively quiet stage amongst the GC contenders. Great performance though by Ramūnas Navardauskis and all the breakaway riders. And here's Bonifant, who didn't work out for him. Bonifant leads in Duque, so those riders were left behind in spectacular fashion. Kobo is out there as well, pushing as best he can. In Sciausti it is that looks as if he's moved clear of the group of favourites. Benyat in Sciausti, sitting 11th overall at 4 minutes and 23 seconds, is looking to grab a few seconds to see if he can get into the top 10 positions. He's only 2 seconds off a top 10, so well, we're doing that. If for nothing else, then at least he makes it onto the leaderboard on television. Although a top 10 position is, of course, a very important position in a Grand Tour if he can manage that one right the way through to the finish. Sean, superb performance by Ramūnas Navardauskis.
Yes, very impressive, and you know, he's such a strong rider, and of course Daniel lost just that little bit in difficulty on the climb, and Navardauskis just, you know, he knew that, and he started putting these attacks and put him in difficulty in the very early slopes and just rode on from there. But you know, he was on a real good day, as they say in bike terms.
So in Sciausti hangs on clear of the favourites group and will grab a few seconds, which could well elevate him into the top 10. And he's got a decent bit of daylight between them, so obviously Vincenzo Nibali and all the other Stana riders felt that wasn't a rider that they were too worried about. And Nibali is well to the fore and keeping attention, because any little split here in this group could cost him a few seconds. But they all worked their way across the line, in line astern. And as far as I could make out, all of the important favourites were in amongst there. Let's see if we can get a sight of the group behind.
Yes, Bradley Wiggins there in that group, so doesn't look like there's anybody, although a smaller group. It did split quite a lot, but I think a lot of the riders who were not really interested in the general classification just riding up the final climb at an easier pace. Yeah,
once they knew that stage honours weren't on offer for that group, perhaps their motivation is a little bit reduced. Vincenzo Nibali. Another day in the Maglia Rosa for the man they call the Shark. So there's confirmation of stage results of stage 11. Ramūnas Navardauskas takes the victory by just over a minute from Daniel Oss, his former breakaway companion. Stefano Pirazzi chases out of the group for a fine third position for Bardiani. Puccio Martins got in ahead of De Luca for fifth place. Ego Martinez was up there for Euskaltel. Serge Powell's in the action all day, eighth place for Amiga Pharma Quickstep. Evgeny Petrov and Jackson Rodriguez round out the top 10.
Great pleasure to be joined by stage winner Ramūnas Navardauskas. Change of plan for the team today. It couldn't really have gone any better.
Yeah, like from yesterday our plans has changed because rider had yesterday a bad day and what we could do, so from today we start racing like a bit different, like trying to be more effective, like all team trying to get in breakaway. So today's plan was to get in a breakaway and stay till the end and try to win.
It looked like it was hard to get into the breakaway, 80 kilometres of attacking at the start.
Yeah, it was descent, backwind, and it was quite difficult, to make a gap because you could feel each one's, wheel behind, and it was not easy to get a break. And then before climb and road became not descent, a bit uphill, and then race start changing, some side wind, and then peloton just splitting up. So there was 19 guys in the front, and we tried to do our best,
And finally, when you were away with Daniel Oss, who's also a fantastically strong rider, what did you think that your chances were coming in towards the finish?
Oh, Oss helped a lot. Like he was really efficient. Like he really helped me a lot, and like we was trying to help each other, and we was not like, messing with each other. We just was working to full gas, and I think at the end I just had better legs, and that's it. I think he's really good sprinter. He's good the short distance, and really strong guy. Because every time when he passed in the front, and to sit on his wheel was not so easy. But I think just long climb I had a little bit advanced, and I made it. So.
Okay, well done. We're all very happy for you. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations to Navardauskas and the whole Garmin-Sharp team led off the leash, and huge encouragement for them to get in the break today. Great job done by them. There's confirmation of the overall standings. Vincenzo Nibali hangs on to his 41-second advantage over Cadel Evans. Roberto Uran still sitting just at 1 second ahead of his teammate Bradley Wiggins in third position. And no real changes amongst the top 10. Domenico Pozzovivo hangs on to that top 10 position, although Benjamin Chausti, as I said, has actually moved into the top 10 in 9th position, 4 minutes and 5 seconds behind the race leader Nibali.